بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah to again send His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, the commander of the faithful, the prince of the believers, the protector of the Prophet and his message, Al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected brothers, my dear respected sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everyone doing after Laylatul Qadr? Inshallah good. Well, anybody else lose their voice like Ali? No? Well, you weren't praying hard enough then. Inshallah, after Laylatul Qadr, you all don't have a dip in your commitment during the holy month of Ramadan. Because what happens practically is that, and I literally heard this, I was in a meeting with some of my colleagues in my law firm back in Michigan. So while I'm here, I'm still trying to coordinate and do some things. I've put things as kind of like as the lowest level of busyness I could, so I can dedicate more time and energy to worship, spirituality, preparing for my lectures, etc., etc. But some things need to be maintained. So I was on a call on Friday with some of my colleagues from the law firm. And one of my colleagues said, okay, Laylatul Qadr is coming, Saturday, tomorrow night, please keep us in your prayers. I was like, of course. He's like, listen, for me, Laylatul Qadr is the best. It's the top. I'm like, yes, for me too. Alhamdulillah, the best night of the year, 1,000 months. He's like, yeah, but after that, Shahr Ramadan's over for me. I was like, what? He said, yeah, Shahr Ramadan's over for me. After Laylatul Qadr, I disappear. So sure, you disappear. You stop fasting. You stop praying. Shil qadiyya. What's going on? What's the situation here, right? And he was being very honest and saying, I basically I check out. Laylatul Qadr is a peak, and I just check out after that. What I would warn you against is checking out. And it's very typical. Attendance decreases after Laylatul Qadr, but you're here. When I come and I give a lecture, and I'm here serving the servants of Ahlul Bayt, the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, especially in these kinds of settings, I don't look at the numbers. I don't look at how big the crowd is. I look at the attention and the focus of each individual that's here. So I appreciate each and every single one of you, my dear respected sisters, my dear respected brothers, for your commitment to yourselves. Because the opportunity with Shahr Ramadan continues. Remember last night, what did we talk about? We were asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this reformation of self, to allow us to be reborn, have a clean slate. But today, you and I started off with a clean slate. Let's say, inshallah, right? Now what are you building? What do you got? What do you do with your clean slate? Do you build on it? Do you build on it or do you slack off? So this is the spirit that I want us to carry on. After Laylatul Qadr, we should be recharged. Many of us, I'm so tired. I'm so tired after Laylatul Qadr. Why are you tired? I stayed up all night. Trust me, you and I, we all know we've stayed up all night for other things too. Whether it's studying, whether it's working, or maybe things that are not so productive. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands of how many Netflix series or how many shows or sitcoms on YouTube that you've stayed up all night watching. You weren't that tired afterwards. Come on. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the law of success. And hopefully we're going to be doing a lot of redefining of what success actually looks like. What is success to us? Now, some questions I want you to start thinking about. When we're looking at the law of success, there's a few things that are going to be within this theme. There's wealth, there's spirituality, and there's power. All of these things under success. Is wealth a bad thing. From a religious framework, religiously, spiritually, when we look at wealth, we look at money, we look at those financial, monetary resources, are those bad things? Do we have negative associations with wealth? 1. 2, spirituality. Is spirituality a feeling that we chase? What is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual? What does it mean to be religious? When someone says, oh, this person's religious, what does that mean? Do they dress a certain way? Do they grow their beard a certain length? What's religiosity actually mean? And then power. What does power actually look like? And what kind of power are we seeking, both as individuals and collectively as a community? Who's ready to jump right in? Who's ready to jump right in? MashaAllah. Give me a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the first thing I want to tackle with us all here tonight as we're reflecting, unfortunately, today's world, but I wouldn't even say today's world, and we often start off with this notion, in today's world, in the modern world, right? This has existed. Some of these preconceived notions have existed for a very long time, as in, what does it mean to be worldly and what does it mean to be spiritual? And that there's some type of binary, that these things are mutually exclusive. To be successful, which usually has some type of attachment of wealth, monetary, worldly success, worldly movement, and what is spiritual, meaning it's detached from this world. It has nothing to do with this world. But we found that from our Islamic tradition, our prophetic tradition, from the ways of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the prophets from before, that necessarily wasn't the case. In fact, you had a number of prophets and imams, representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that had tremendous worldly success, that had masses of wealth, great power in a worldly sense, but at the same time were the most spiritual individuals on the face of this earth. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the mantle of leadership that was in their capacity, in their positions as prophets and as imams. We'll go through some examples. Look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, Joseph, would go from being an individual, son of Jacob, son of Yaqub, betrayed by his brothers, thrown to a well, basically left for dead, would be taken up in a slave route, taken as a servant in the house of the nobles of Egypt, and then would finally rise after years of trials and tribulations. Yusuf alayhi salam would become Al-Aziz. He would become this high chancellor of Egypt, second only to the greatest in command in the state of Egypt. Now, under Yusuf alayhi salam was all this type of worldly dominion. Yusuf alayhi salam was a commander, was a statesman, was someone who amassed great wealth. That's one example. Another example is whom? King Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman, who also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him dominion of the east and the west. When you look at these individuals, from the prophets of the past to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, who yes, experienced, in most of these stories, by the way, you'll see these individuals coming from humble beginnings, humble backgrounds, where they experience the full gamut of the human movement from going from poverty to wealth, right? And I'm going to make a point on a few of these things, on that movement itself, where you had Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a child, orphaned, not necessarily of the greatest means. It wasn't where he was born into a family that was just giving him wealth. Not necessarily the case. A noble family, a family of virtue, absolutely. But Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a man who worked very hard for what he had attained, and he was successful as a merchant, as a trader, as a businessman. The equivalent of what you and I would have as a businessman today. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that. before the announcement of his message, before the Ba'tha at the age of 40 in 610 CE, Prophet Muhammad was known in his community, in his society, as as-Sadiq al-Amin. He's known to be the truthful, the honest, the trustworthy one. And he gained that reputation, my dear brothers and sisters, through his business dealings. He was recruited by the enterprise of Sayyidah Khadija alayha salam, who she, and this is another example to us of what wealth looks like, kind of destroying that preconceived notion that some of us have regarding wealth being a bad thing. She, Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam, was not only the wealthiest and most successful female entrepreneur, she was the wealthiest and most successful entrepreneur in Arabia. Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam's company, her enterprise, her trading company, owned more than 10% of the economy of her region. I want you to think about that. Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam was a virtuous religious woman. She was a monotheist. She believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam would become the first Muslim, the first person to believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and support him. She was the first to say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. She was a very wealthy, successful woman. She had everything going for her. And the only reason why Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam was not married at that time, by that point, by the way, my dear brothers, by that point, when she married Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and her first marriage was to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and her only marriage was to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only reason she wasn't married is because she was too good. There was nobody that was good enough for Khadija. Mind you, a lot of people don't realize this. All of the chieftains and nobles of Quraysh, some who would become the enemies of the Prophet, were ones who asked for Khadija and sought her out in marriage, including Abu Sufyan. She was successful. She had everything. And the only match for her was somebody named whom? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only person that was good enough for Khadija was khairu khalqillah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at that. But look, she had all the success, and the success was not detached from, exclusive from her religiosity, her spirituality, her commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So she married Muhammad for his virtue. And she supported him and believed in him when no one believed in him. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he describes Khadija alayhi salam. He said, I was invigorated by her love. She believed in me when no one would believe in me. She helped me when no one would lend me a helping hand. She gave me which no one else could give me. And Allah blessed me with children only from Khadija that survived. The lineage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, and from her Al-Hasan wal-Hussein, and the lineage of the Prophet. Anybody that claims lineage to the Prophet is through whom? Through Khadija alayhi salam. I want you to pay attention to this and see, in the tradition of prophethood and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, there wasn't the sense of being detached from the world. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. From being detached from the world, like I'm not living here. I'm gonna be away in my corner, disassociated from the whole world. Nobody bother me. I'm just worshiping. No. The Prophet attained his reputation before his message as as-Sadiq al-Amin, the honest, the truthful, the trustworthy. How? Because he was engaged in business. Because he was engaged in an economy. Because he was engaged in a society. And he did so rightfully, truthfully, in the best of ways. You see the same, by the way, from Imam Ali alayhi salam and the rest of our Imams. Some people ask, how did Imam al-Hasan, who we celebrated the first night I came here, the first night I was up here, we celebrated Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Some people ask, how did Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam become Kareem Ahlul Bayt? Isn't Imam al-Hasan Kareem Ahlul Bayt? Right? How did he become Kareem Ahlul Bayt? Where there are narrations that say Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam gave the entirety of his wealth multiple times in his life. And then other times in his life, he would give half of his wealth all the way to charity. How did he do that? And why was it such a big deal? You know why? Because Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam was wealthy. How was he wealthy? Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam had investments. How did he have investments? Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, like Imam Ali alayhi salam, they would purchase land. They would train people, develop the land, grow orchards, and have revenue coming from the land that they cultivated. They worked with people and worked with their own hands. They worked hard. And they had what? Revenue. They had what? Product. They produced. From Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you don't see idle hands. This was the tradition of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So when we're looking at this, what do we see? I'm emphasizing these points that from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you don't see this detachment, but instead you see discipline. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides and you're working hard, you give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a companion of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam that came to him one day. I'm going to make this quick reference so that you can see the difference when we mean not detachment but discipline. He came to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and I was mentioning the story to some of the brothers in previous nights regarding this idea of spirituality and how it connects to this worldly sense. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, one of his companions comes to him and he's wearing wool. He's wearing very coarse clothing. He changed the way he dressed. And in the conversation, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam asks him, and I'm paraphrasing here, so why are you dressed like this? And he told him, I'm trying to be ascetic, I'm trying to be humble, I'm trying to reject this world and be like you. He said, I didn't teach you this. He was confused. He said, then what do you teach? He said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with wealth, we are content with it, we praise Him, we thank Him, and we give through it. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us with poverty, we are content, we are patient, and we continue to live in contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with what He provides. Meaning what? The goal is not to be wealthy or to be impoverished. The goal is not to be having oneself at the helm, a great power over society, or being one who is completely detached and dissociated from society. The goal is for one to be content with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them, and in seeking that contentment, you are trying your utmost best to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we're looking at these examples of wealth, these examples of influence, whether it be from the Prophet, the Prophets before, from Imam Ali alayhi salam, look at Imam Ali alayhi salam, look at his life. You see Imam Ali alayhi salam as that young man being the champion of all the battles that Islam went through. Who was on the front line? Who would basically be praised for all of the glory of Islam? It would be said that if it were not for the wealth of Khadija and the sword of Ali, Islam would be no. Islam would not exist. Islam would not flourish. This early group of people, this early civilization flourished in a very short period of time. You went from a few hundred people in the first battle that was a continuation of the persecution of the Muslims from Mecca to Medina in the Battle of Badr, about 300 men, 313 men, some narrations say, to 10,000 in marching back onto Mecca and on the conquest of Mecca. How did this take place? Did this take place out of thin air? No. It was built upon the wealth of Khadija alayhi salam. So is there a negative connotation that's associated from an Islamic worldview onto wealth? Absolutely not. Wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an excellent thing. It's a means, it's a tool. With wealth, you have the building of mosques and institutions that support a community. With wealth, you have the building of education, of libraries, of schools. With wealth, you have the support of families. How are our young ones going to grow and be educated without wealth? So the idea of going towards wealth and building wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let it be where in our minds we have that resolved, that it's no issue. The issue is with those who hoard wealth, those who do not give charity, those who do not pay zakat, those who do not pay khums, those who do not make sure that their wealth is blessed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's problematic. Those who believe that once they've amassed wealth, that now they're independent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal-'iyadhu billah. Because what happens to some people is that once they become wealthy, once they have companies, once they have assets, like, oh, now I'm good. I don't need the religious way anymore. And this is where we need to caution ourselves. Do we become more religious and more spiritual when we are in need, seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sustenance, and then when He provides us, we decide, all right, now I'm good. Now I can focus on other things. I was sharing with some of the brothers the other night, and I want to share this with the whole group, inshallah, just so that you get some insight into some of the side conversations that we have with the brothers. I was urging them, for the young volunteers, the young men especially. I didn't get the opportunity to talk to the sisters about this, so here it is. This khidmah that we have, the service that we have in our mosque, in our institutions, in our centers, in our communities, wherever you may be, MashaAllah, you're here at the Imam Ali Center. Continue to serve here. This is your opportunity. But don't make it an opportunity out of convenience. And for our elders in the community, don't discourage the youth and the young ones from serving because it's a distraction from what really matters. Let me tell you what I mean here. Sometimes what we have in our communities is our youth get involved because they have time. And okay, fill your time with being involved at the mosque so that you're not out there doing something stupid. Excuse me. Right? So you're not out there doing the things that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, that's nice. But then when they have other opportunities, whether it be through their studies, it be through their work, now they got an interview to a job, they get interviewed, they get accepted for a job opportunity, and now they're working, now I'm too busy to be of service at the mosque, at the center. Okay? Is that something that we encourage, whether vocally or implicitly? Is the mosque, is the center, just there out of convenience, or is it an honor for each and every one of us to be here, to be of service? I'll tell you here, I hope I'm a living example of this. Meaning what? I've gotten my education. I work as a practicing attorney. I have some of these accolades that some of us praise in the community. But to me, that's not my greatest success. The greatest success for me is to be of service to my community, the community of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That's the greatest success for me. So I was telling the young brothers, I told them, listen, go to med school. Go to law school. And I'm going to support you in that. Whatever you need on your way to that, if you need a recommendation letter, if you need a connection with somebody else at this law school, at this institution, at this firm, wherever I can be of service, let me be of service. But don't let go of your khidmah. Don't let go of your service here in your community. This is what keeps you who you are. This is what keeps you who you are. We need to change the way we look at when it comes to our community. Some people may look at it and say, oh, one seeking a religious education is secondary to one seeking what? A university education for a certain degree, for a certain career, right? I'll tell you, while I was seeking my university education, my law school education, I was trying to find ways to educate myself religiously. I still am. I still have a mentor. I still have a teacher. I still read every day. I still listen to lectures every day and commit myself to that. And even when I slack off, my mentor's on top of me saying, hey, where are you going? Who do you think you are? Keeping me grounded, keeping me in check. Why? Because our lives, my dear brothers and sisters, are not about just attaining a career, or not just about attaining a job. Our lives are about being what? of service. When you look at our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is better than him? Is there any, let's be honest with ourselves. Do you think, truly, is there better a person, better example, better a human being, better a man than Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is there anyone? No. No. What is his first title? And you say this every single day in your prayer. Abd. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Do you think, by the way, that's something, it's not, that's the most honorable thing for a person to have. But you and I choose what kind of abd do we want to be. Do you want to be a abd of money? Do you want to be a abd of a company? Do you want to be a abd of a desire, of a whim? Or do you want to be a abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's honor. That's success. So what? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the greatest example, the cream of the crop. God tells us, khayru khalqillah, there's nobody better than Muhammad. Nobody. I challenge you, find me somebody more complete than Muhammad. The only person that comes close to him, nafs Rasulullah, is whom? Imam Ali alayhi salam. And how does Imam Ali alayhi salam describe himself in comparison to Muhammad? Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. What does he say? Ana abdun min abidi Muhammad. Ana abdun min abidi. Look at how great the Prophet is. That Imam Ali, who nobody could take this man down. They had to kill him in his prayer. And even in his prayer, the guy couldn't get the job done from the first try. They had to wait 2 days for Imam Ali alayhi salam to. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Ana abdun min abidi Muhammad. Look how great our Prophet is. And what is his greatest title? Abdullah. That, my dear brothers and sisters, so what does this tell us? The spirituality that a human being has, the religiosity that a human being has, it's not detached from the world. It's that you live in the world, but you don't let the world live inside of you. I'm going to say that one more time. You live in the world. You're a part of this world. You serve in the world, but you don't let the world live inside of you. The Prophet ﷺ and Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, they were the most effective servant leaders of their society. Nobody was more effective than them. Can you tell me somebody who you're supposed to be literally the helm, at the helm of society. You're supposed to be the president. You're supposed to be the prime minister. You're supposed to be all of these things. And then there's a coup. And they take everything from you. Most of the time, when we see today, we see people, when coups happen, khalas, they're gone. They leave. Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, Imam Ali alayhi salam never left. Imam al-Hassan never left. Imam al-Hussein never left. Nobody left. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, after the tragedy of Karbala, he didn't leave. He stayed. In fact, after Karbala, you would think Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam would go somewhere else. Where did he go? He went back to Medina. Back to teaching, back to educating, back to inspiring people, back to working. Back to working. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, what some people also don't realize, is when he was building his university and had thousands of students, the thousands of students that he had were across many disciplines. But across all of the disciplines that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam had, from jurisprudence and theology and astronomy and chemistry and the sciences, all of these things, across all of these things, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was teaching all of his students ethics, professionalism, and human dealing. How do we deal with one another? How do we interact with one another? What are your ethics? What makes you, you? So that when it comes from the spiritual framework that we have, the spiritual worldview that we have, you can go and be a pioneer in any field you want. You want to become a doctor? Be a doctor. Be the best doctor. You want to be an engineer? Be the best engineer. You want to go into computer science and IT and technology? Go for it. Do it. But how are you going to be of service? How are you going to have khidmah still be not just a part of your life, the center of your life? Do you want to be someone who just had a career and you made some good money and then you died and people are like, oh yeah, thanks. You left, a few $1,000s left for your family. Is that what you want for your life? Or do you want to be somebody who connected it all? It wasn't just a matter of convenience that you came to the mosque because you had nothing else to do. You made God and the community that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had entrusted to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and us in the era of occultation, you made all of that the center of your life. Does that mean you leave everything and you just come to the mosque and just wait for what's next? No. The Prophet himself told people, get up from your prayer and go and take care of your family, when he saw that all they were doing was praying all day in the mosque. He said, that's your worship. Take care of your family. But do you see the difference here? What we have in our religion is not this dichotomy, spiritual or material. No, Imam Ali alayhi salam gives you the balance, the equation, so simply, so beautiful. So he tells you what? Work for this life. Work for this life as if you'll live forever. And work for the next life as if you'll die tomorrow. There was what? This idea that you need to be invested actually in this world so that you have something to show for. Work for this. Even if you need to plant a tree. Let's say the idea is you're going to plant something. When you plant a tree, do you see the tree grow right away? No, it takes years. Even if you only have 1 day left and you can plant a tree and you know you're going to die tomorrow, they would tell us, plant the tree. But there's also a spiritual urgency, so that when I'm planting that tree, what's my intention in planting that tree? I know I'm going to leave tomorrow. I know I'm not going to be here forever. So I connect that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm always thinking, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to God and to Him we return. That becomes your peace. So that when I say, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with wealth, we take it and then we give it. My spirituality is not by being detached from this world. We need doctors, we need entrepreneurs, we need lawyers, we need engineers, we need people to be invested on the highest level in all of these industries. And we need them to be of service to the community. It's not one or the other. Religiosity and commitment to our community is not out of convenience. It's, if I go away for a few years for med school, I come back to my community and I serve it. If I attain some success and some wealth, I come back and I give and I pour into my community. I never forget my community. I never forget my people. I never forget where I come from. That's true success. Otherwise, you just gained a little bit of money and you put it in a bank account. You're going to die one day. Somebody's going to inherit it, but they're never going to really remember your significance. They just remembered, oh, wow, that was nice. Because what? Our legacy and our true power lies in the intention behind our deed, behind our action. When you look at Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the day of Ashura, anybody's standard would have saw a group of 100 men slaughtered and massacred by a group of 30,000. It was a military defeat. But was that Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam a military defeat? Did he lose? Absolutely not. Why? The intention behind the action. So when people, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, I think in a previous visit that I've had, when it came to the comparison between Imam Ali and Muawiyah, some people academically will compare the two and say Muawiyah was a greater leader, a greater political figure than Imam Ali. How? Oh, there was fitna and there was civil strife and there was civil wars and there was all these things under Imam Ali alayhi salam. He only ruled for 4 years and 10 months. But if you look at Muawiyah, it was 18 years and the Umayyads were flourishing and people were wealthy and people, okay. But this is where you don't understand intention behind the action. When you have the likes of Imam Ali and Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, when Imam Ali alayhi salam says, لا أسلمن ما سلمت أمور المسلمين, that I will do what? I will give up and do whatever is going to be in the best affairs of the people. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, this peace accord, I will remove myself from the caliphate so long as people's rights are protected. And Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, إن كان دين محمد لم يستقم إلا بقتلي فيا سيوف خذيني. Even though, by the way, that's a poetry attributed to Imam Hussein. It's not actually what he said. But it describes Imam Hussein's situation, right? All of those, you see the intention behind the action that brings out the actual power. Because if you don't see the intention behind the action, you don't get the full picture. You just see Muawiyah, 18 years, ruling, power. But in it, behind the glitter, was the greatest corruption. It was decaying. The morality was gone. There was nothing good in it. Versus with Imam Ali and Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, you see with them, yes, there were times, Imam Ali alayhi salam was the Khalifa for almost 5 years. Meaning what? The whole Muslim empire was under Imam Ali alayhi salam. Some people, and unfortunately sometimes us as Shia, we focus only on Imam Ali's time as a ruler. And we think, yes, this was the power. You know when Imam Ali alayhi salam's greatest power was? All the time. Why? Where do you think Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, when he's talking about contentment with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us, where's that coming from? Imam Ali's greatest time was all the time, every time. Why did he say, فُزْتُ وَرَبِّ الْكَعْبَةِ? Why? Why? Because he ended his life the way he started his life. It was all the same. And now the end came with what? I'm still in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've won. There's not a single moment in the entirety of my life that I've strayed away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Amir al-Mu'mineen. فُزْتُ وَرَبِّ الْكَعْبَةِ. Look at that. With all of the wealth, with all of the dominion. Look at, by the way, Imam Ali alayhi salam, because you want examples and examples and examples. Imam Ali alayhi salam, even though he had so much power and authority under him when he was the Khalifa, even the wick of a candle, he wouldn't let it burn for the wrong purposes. When he was visited by Talha and Zubayr, and they had a personal matter to discuss with him. They tried to bring it forth as a matter of state, but it wasn't a matter of state. So the Imam asked him, he said, what is your matter? Is it a personal matter or a matter of state? They talked amongst themselves, it was a personal matter. They had something that they had a personal agenda to come forth. Imam Ali alayhi salam had 2 candles. He had one candle that was burning, and he put it out. And then he turned on a second candle. And then they had their questions, they had their answers, and then when they're about to leave, they turn back and they say, Ya Ali, you turned off one candle, you turned on another candle. What was that? He said, this candle was from the money of the state. This candle was from my personal money. Imam Ali alayhi salam wouldn't even let. Look at the justice and the fairness and the truth and honesty of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is success. He had all of the wealth under him of the whole Muslim ummah. He wouldn't even use the wick of a candle unjustly. This is what we need to bring forth in our community, my dear brothers and sisters. This zealousness, this type of ghira, this type of chivalry and protection over our families, over our faith, over our community, that we want to do right by our community. By the way, look at what Imam Ali alayhi salam did. He put the standard on himself. His responsibility. He didn't go to Talha and Zubayr and say, hey, what are you doing? What are you spending? In that situation, he didn't reprimand them. He was setting the example. He was telling them, this is how I rule. This is how I lead. This is how I live. You and I, let's not fall into the mistake of trying to hold others accountable. Hold yourself accountable. Oh, but she's not serving the way she should. Oh, he's not doing what he's supposed to be. Oh, no. Hold yourself accountable. Stop looking at other people and trying to raise them. Your children raise them, mashallah. And if some of my brothers say, you don't have kids yet, inshallah, when you have kids, that's your opportunity to raise somebody. Don't raise other people. And let's raise ourselves. I was having a discussion with my kids. My daughter Zahra, my son Ali. My daughter Zahra, she told me, Baba, you told me don't take off your seatbelt until I park. I was like, yes, Baba, you're right. She said, but you took your seatbelt off before you finished parking. And I tried, she got me. I was like, she got me. So I was trying to explain. I was like, well, Baba, I'm an adult and this, and I was trying to give the, and then she's just looking at me. And I was looking and seeing, I'm doing an injustice to her. I told Baba, I made a mistake. And as a parent, sometimes it's hard to say I made a mistake. I told her, Baba, I made a mistake. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. But I also want to teach you something. For somebody that's older than you, don't call them out on their mistakes. And poor thing, she wasn't trying to call me out on my mistake. She was just trying to understand the situation, right? For us, we need to be mindful that we are setting the example for our kids, and what success looks like needs to be manifested and done by ourselves as people, as individuals, so that the next generation can see it. And I'm not going to go to the next person and say, you need to do this and you need to do it. God forgive me. I'm in no place to do that. But as a reminder to all of us, if we really want to see success for our next generation, for our children, for our community, we need to implement these things ourselves. We need to make it where the idea of spirituality and religiousness is not disconnected from success, material success. We need to have amongst us, when we encourage our youth, who here wants our youth to go to the best universities? Who here wants our youth to go to the best universities? MashaAllah, excellent, we all do. Who here wants our youth to get the best jobs, better than the jobs that we have? MashaAllah. Who here wants our youth to become wealthy and successful more than we are and our parents are? MashaAllah, we all do, right? But the idea needs to be what? We push them in that direction within the framework of religiosity. They go hand in hand. Some people, for example, who here loves to take part in azadari? Oh man, I just have one brother. Wrong question. Okay, who here loves to attend the majalis of Imam al-Hussein? MashaAllah. Okay, that's general. Okay, great. If you love to attend the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, it should not be that the one who is religious that's attending the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is not the one who is also successful. Or the one who is successful and has a business and has this is not attending the majalis. It's both together. The religious practice, the religious adherence, who here is coming and attending for prayer? The person who's coming for prayer, coming for Jum'ah, coming for congregation, all of those at the same time. And the mosque in the center is promoting that success in this life and the next. That urgency to work for this life as if you'll live forever, as Imam Ali alayhi salam says, and to work for the next life as if you'll die tomorrow. Inshallah, we as a community, my dear brothers and sisters, supporting one another, being there for one another. Any connections, any network, any contacts that we have to be of service to one another, any advice that we can give, you'll be surprised. My young sisters, my young brothers, you'll be surprised from your community, people that you can benefit from professionally, people that you can benefit from, like, oh, this person runs this firm, or this person works for this company, and you had no idea. You just look at them as that's the uncle or that's the auntie from the mosque. Connect with each other and start bringing together this integration of your life, your school, your work, your religion. Your religion is not one aspect of your life with the other aspects. Your religion is the foundation for it. So that inshallah, you have all the wealth that you're seeking. Inshallah, you keep all the health in your life. Inshallah, you get all of the things that you're trying for, but you don't substitute one for something else that you already have. You don't substitute the religiosity for the wealth, and you don't substitute the wealth for the spirituality. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this spirit with this reminder. I hope it was beneficial to everybody. I hope you can reflect on it a little bit more. And if we can be of service to one another and helping each other in our networks, in our contacts, so that any one of us who is striving, we help them attain that success for this life and the next life, inshallah. With that, my dear brothers and sisters, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgiveness and guidance, and ask Him to keep our success in line with the awaiting of our Master, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu al-Sharif. And the last of our prayers, and Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على نبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على